Welcome, Brookings Bio students. This is Mrs. Rydell, and today we're going to look at another kind of Punnett square called a Testcross. When you look at the phenotype of different organisms, what you can always tell what the genotype is if you're looking at a homozygous recessive organism. But when you look at an organism that shows the dominant phenotype, you can't always tell what the genes are. For example, if I look at a tall pea plant, I really can't tell whether my parent genotype is big T, that would look tall, or it could have this genotype, big T, little t. Both of those plants are going to look the same way. They're going to show the same phenotype. I can't really tell what genes they have by looking at them. And so one of the things that we can do to try and determine the genotype of an organism that I can't really tell by looking is called a Testcross. And Testcross are used to try and figure out what genes an unknown organism has. And so when we want to do a Testcross, we're always going to cross our unknown organism, our unknown parent, with a homozygous recessive parent. And then we look to see the results of that cross. And the offspring, what the offspring look like, can give us a clue about what the parent genes are. So let's set up two test crosses and look at what are the possible offspring we can get. So I'm going to cross two tall-looking parents. In the first cross, the tall-looking parent is big T, and that's one possible gene combination you could have to make you look big, look tall. If I take that parent and I cross them with a homozygous recessive parent, a short-looking parent, here is my Punnett square. Right? I can fill in the boxes. If my unknown parent has the big T combination, and I cross it with a homozygous little t, what I'm going to get is all tall offspring. There's no way that I can get any short offspring with these two parent genotypes. If, however, my parent is heterozygous, big T, little t, it still looks tall, but I really can't tell that that little t is hiding there. The little t is recessive, remember? So if I cross a parent that's big T, little t with a homozygous recessive, two little t's, I'm going to get a little different combination, different probabilities in my offspring. About half the offspring are going to be tall, have the big T, little t combination, but half of my offspring are going to show that recessive trait. Because that little recessive trait, the recessive allele, is hiding there in the parent, if I cross it with a parent that has the recessive trait, I have a possibility of making offspring that show the shortness, show the short phenotype. And so that's the way I can tell. If I cross a parent that I don't know what their genes are with a homozygous recessive, always with a homozygous recessive, two littles, I can get the possibility of having some offspring that show the recessive phenotype, and that's how I can tell whether that little recessive allele was there in the parent. So let's do a little cross and practice this. One of the causes of deafness in dogs is a gene, a recessive allele, that causes the puppies to be born deaf. So if you have the little d genotype, you would have a deaf puppy. So that means that hearing dogs could have two possible genotypes. If I'm a dog that can hear, I could have the big D genotype, or I could also have big D, little d genotype, and I would look, my phenotype means I would look deaf. And so if I had a dog who was normal hearing and I wanted to maybe breed that dog and make sure that I didn't have puppies that were going to be deaf. What I could do would be to do a test cross and try and determine what genes the parents had. So let's set up the punnet. If my parent is Big D, a hearing dog that is homozygous dominant, only can produce puppies in this cross that can hear, even though the dog you're crossing with is deaf, little d, only can make puppies that can hear if the unknown parent is homozygous dominant, Big D. If the unknown parent is Big D, and you cross it with a homozygous recessive, you have the possibility of producing some deaf puppies. So if I do a test cross and I get some puppies that are deaf, it tells me the parent genotype had to have that little d. This kind of cross only really works one direction though. Is it possible if I have the little d allele in my parent, my unknown parent, they have the little d allele, is it possible when you do the test cross that you could get puppies that can hear? Yes, you can. So remember we talked about probability works best and closest to what you'd expect if you have big numbers. If you do a test cross and you only have 1 or 2 puppies, you still don't really know what the parents are, because this cross can give you puppies that can hear. And this cross can also give you puppies that could hear. You could have some puppies that can still hear, and you still wouldn't really know which of these genotypes that unknown parent is. The only way you know is getting puppies that can't hear, getting puppies that are deaf, because this parent can't make puppies that are deaf with this cross. This parent can make puppies that are deaf. Okay, let's look at another cross. We're going to do fire-breathing dragons here. And fire-breathing dragons, being able to breathe fire is the dominant trait. Breathing fire is dominant over non-fire breathing. So if I have a dragon that is a fire-breathing dragon, could have 2 possible genotypes. Big F, big F, or big F, little f. Both of those, because they have the dominant allele, could be fire-breathing dragons. So how would I tell which genotype my dragon is? I would have to do a test cross. So if I do a test cross with my fire-breathing parent, and I don't really know what genes it has, with a homozygous recessive, remember non-fire breathing is going to be the homozygous recessive genotype to make it so you can't breathe fire. If I do a test cross and I fill in my combinations now, I'm going to get all fire-breathing dragons if my parent is homozygous dominant, big F. When I do the test cross with this combination, if my fire-breathing dragon that I don't really know what the genes are has this gene combination, it's going to be able to make some fire-breathing offspring, but also some non-fire-breathing. If they get little f from the mom and little f from the dad, I'm going to get some little dragons that can't breathe fire. So I can do a test cross and then look to see what the offspring are, and it gives me a clue about what the parent genotype was. If you get some non-fire breathing dragons, I know the parent was carrying that little recessive allele, little f, big F, little f. If I get only fire-breathing dragons, I still really can't tell. I would have to do another test cross and get more offspring to make sure. This test is only a one-way test. It only can say, yes, I know that little f is there if I get offspring that show the recessive trait. It doesn't really prove for sure if you get offspring that show the dominant trait, because both kinds of genotypes for the parents can produce fire-breathing offspring. Those are some examples of some test cross, and I'm going to give you some punnets to practice with.